So that's your EGT right here. Now I'm going to rev it up a little bit.
Hey guys, should we put it in race mode? That sounds fun.
What's up? Welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of the EFI series that we're doing. We're going to go over starting and operating the Moster EFI, so let's get into it.
Will it run without a battery?
No.
No, there's no charging system on it. A few reasons is, number one, to save weight. Lose a lot of additional complexity. You have to run a charging system on it, everything, voltage regulator, all this other stuff. So they found that this works way better than having a charging system on it. So that's why they've designed this proprietary battery to run with this specific engine. It's optimized for this engine itself. It's also a very low amp system, so it's not consuming a whole lot of battery while it's running. So that's another feature of it. It just consumes very little electrical energy to function. So as you can see, the battery is a sealed and contained unit. There's a processor here to optimize it. Also got a 60 amp fuse built into the top. Completely self-contained. Got some vents here to cool, made of aluminum.
It is a 16.8 volt LiPo battery, 3.3 amps.
This XT60 connector here is for your starting system only. And then this other connector here is for the EFI system. You can see this is small gauge wiring because the EFI system doesn't require that much amperage draw on it. Where of course this starting system is going to be a lot of draw. But you're only hitting that button for a couple of seconds and it cranks right up.
That's actually one of the cool features I think of this engine is how easily and how quickly it starts.
Yeah, it's
like
funny.
you just pop that button. I've seen e-start struggle before, like they hold the button down and it's cranking and cranking and cranking. This thing, you have yet to see it fail to start.
Right. It's almost comical how quickly it starts, how different. That's another thing that's very striking compared to a regular Moster is how quickly it starts. Like it starts like your car. You hit the button and it cranks right up, no problem.
Clear. Double tap to start. Fires right up.
Again, that's going to add a lot of reliability to the starting system that hasn't been available to that starting system before.
There'll be 2 different reductions for this engine, just like the regular Moster. There's a 268 reduction and a 287 reduction. That 287 reduction is so you can swing a bigger prop. There are specific approved propeller lists, as with every Vittorazi motor, but this one is even more restrictive. The 140 prop is going to be on the 287 motor. The 130 and the 125 is going to be on the 268 motor.
The EFI system needs a certain load on it in order to function correctly, and the mapping and all that, it's all going to be affected by the load. So that's why, especially with these engines, that it needs a specific prop on it. There's no wiggle room there. Like if you send your telemetry to Vittorazi, they will know exactly where and when you put the wrong prop on it.
And I think that's actually a really amazing thing about this engine is if you have trouble with this engine, chances are very, very good that Vittorazi is going to know exactly what's gone wrong with it. Right? There's so much data feeding into the system that we've never had before with a paramotor engine. There's engine data feeding in from all over the place about how the engine is performing, how the prop is spinning. You can tell if the prop is unbalanced from this data. You can tell if the pilot has gone to a different altitude than what they've normally gone to. You can tell absolutely everything about your flight from this data. When the engine has a failure, or if the engine starts to have a failure, we'll be able to diagnose that super quick.
So it logs data for, was it an hour and a half?
It has built-in memory of up to 9 hours of flight data, and every period of time, and this is a configurable thing, every period of time it's going to inject something into its log file that says, here's what my fuel consumption was, here's what my altitude was, and it's going to give you all these different data points, and it's going to put that in a log file, and it's going to keep up to 9 hours of flight data. And if you ever have an issue, and for the first several flights that we fly with this thing, every single flight, we're going to download all of that data, we're going to send it off to Vittorazi, and we'll be able to interpret that data, and we'll be able to look at graphs and things, and tell how the flight was.
Okay, we've done our typical pre-flight, checking the prop, checking your bolts, all that sort of stuff. We're gonna walk you through what you're gonna have when you're pulling your machine out of the garage, loading up in your truck, getting ready to go fly. Whenever you're done using the motor, you want to disconnect the battery. You've got this terminal here is what powers the EFI system itself. You can see it's a smaller gauge wire. And then this is for your start of the XT60 connector. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug these in. I'm going to turn the battery on, beeps, and you'll be able to hear the pump running its cycles, running its tests, and then that's the actual value that it's pushing. So we know that the pump is good. Okay, so we're going to set our fuel level. Push enter, go up. I know I have 6 liters in this tank from this morning. Okay, so our tank level is set. Put the motor on. All right, we're clear. Clear. Double tap to start. Fires right up. So I'll show you the safe start real quick. Double tap. So it kills the engine. If the engine was to go to full throttle within that first 4 seconds, engine will cut off. Double tap. Cranks right up. Now, you're gonna let it run, warm up. And it'll show on the display when you're in that first 4-second window, it'll say wait right here. Now you've got RPM, battery life, liters per hour, and that's your CHT. Actually, that's your EGT right here. Now I'm gonna rev it up a little bit. See how it instantly goes down, up and down? It's pretty sensitive, EGT.
So this thing does fly a little bit differently, and the pre-start procedure is a little bit different, and so you would definitely need to have some sort of briefing before we allow just any pilot to fly this thing, right? Have to teach people how to start the engine, first of all, because people aren't going to be able to do that without knowing how to do that. You have to press the right buttons in the right sequence.
Right, and the finalized production version will be a little bit simpler. They're going to have videos available. I'm sure we'll make a video on how to start your Moster EFI.
And here's a challenge for you guys. We would love to know how you'd like us to test this engine. We have some tests in mind for ourselves, but we'd love to hear your feedback on how you'd like us to test this engine and what data you'd like to see. This is basically the same concept as Velcro, but this is a very stiff loop and hook system, and it's kind of the same thing over here. And when these things mate together, you can actually hear an audible click as they lock into place.
There it is. So we're back here in the shop at Aviator. I wanted to show you what you get when you order your Moster with EFI. So this is the box. This is your display unit here. The dongle to download all your telemetry so you can communicate with your dealer if you are having a problem with your Moster EFI. There's an SD card in here. You would download the telemetry onto this dongle. It'll feed it into the SD card. Plug your SD card in the computer, send me the file if you buy it from us, and we can analyze the telemetry and figure out what the problem is if you do have a problem. Some extra fuel filters, and we'll get into that, where those go and everything, and then this is your battery charger here. So charging is super easy on this. You may need a European to American adapter, depending on what they end up going with in production. These are super cheap, get it on Amazon, something like that. So plug into the wall, plug in your battery. It's going to cycle through. All right, now it's charging. That's all you got to do. Plug it in. Like I said, about an hour or so it takes. This battery's been designed for safety. This is obviously made in-house. Vittorazi logo all over the place on it. Processor, fuse on it and everything. It is a LiPo battery, however, and Vittorazi recommends that you don't leave it unattended. So make sure you're around it just to be on the safe side. You want to take a look down in the throttle body here. As I was telling you in the previous video, as Matt was describing, it's like kind of like the same concept as a ball valve in plumbing, where once you're full throttle, it's completely unobstructed down into the intake. So now that we have the air box off, you can get a little bit better view inside the throttle body and what's around the throttle body.
here the throttle position sensor and the plug for it. If you notice, the throttle cable is on the opposite side of the normal Moster, so that's you'd have to reroute the throttle cable a little bit. You have the injector, so the feed and return right here, and the connector for that. So if you look closely, you can see the ring gear for the starter, and there's the flywheel right there. So if you look down here between the ECU and the Carter support, where you normally have your pull starter mechanism, there's a cover there for the flywheel and no pull starter, obviously. With having the ECU and the pump housing and the pump unit and all that on front of the engine where the pull starter normally is, that additional weight that is from all of that is put up tight to your back and up higher. So when you actually have the motor on your back, you don't feel the weight quite as much as when you're grabbing the paramotor and moving it around. And if you're grabbing it by hand and lugging it around the shop, you'll feel the additional weight a bit compared to the regular Moster. But putting it on your back, it's not very much heavier feeling. So this is the meat and potatoes. This is the brain of the unit here. This is the EFI unit. So as you can see, there's good automotive grade connectors with seals and everything. So this part of the unit is waterproof. I wouldn't hit it with a pressure washer or something like that, but if you got it on your hitch carrier or something, get caught in the rain, it's not gonna be the end of the world. You got standard Moster rubber motor mounts that you're used to on your regular Moster. Also, the EFI system as a whole is also mounted on rubber mounts here to provide additional dampening. That's with all the electronics and all that that's going on inside there. Obviously, you're gonna need some dampening vibration here. So there's a few rubber mounts here as well that'll isolate the whole system. Yeah, so you can see here the EFI unit moves independently of the motor itself. So this is your temperature sending unit. CHT probe goes up through here. The EGT probe goes through here. So cylinder head temperature, exhaust gas temperature, all in one unit, sending data to the ECU right here. And down here, you have the pump unit. The bottom line is the feed, top line is the return. So this is some special Tygon fuel line that's very thick, very resistant to kinking. So it can handle the pressures that are required to operate the unit, but it's, like I said, doesn't have a tendency to kink. It's very resistant to that. Should last a long time. Then the back side of the pump, the bottom one here is your feed line. There's the micro filter that I was showing you earlier in the little handy box that you get. That filter is in here. So filtration is very important with this unit because you do not want any debris getting in that injector. It's going to cause some issues with the injector functioning properly. So that'll be a maintenance item that you need to do. And then the top one here is the return line. So any fuel that's not being used by the injector is going to feed back into the tank. So we're going to get into part 2 of this video series that we're going to do on the EFI. We're going to do a Q&A section. So let's get at it.
Dr. Danny McCarty 2222 asks, but is the display waterproof?
So I would say no, and the reason being it's a paramotor. We're not flying through rain or something like that. But if you do have it on a carrier, all of these connectors that you see here have seals on them. They're automotive grade. So don't hit it with a pressure washer, but if it's on your carrier and it does start raining, you'll be fine. But when you are transporting your paramotor, your EFI, unplug, pull it off the Velcro, put it in the car. Easy enough.
Yeah, waterproof is an interesting word because there's a lot of connotations that come with that. We don't actually have official word from Vittorazi on which components are waterproof and which components are not. So the safest bet for right now is just to treat it as if it's not.
This is like the final prototype before production. So 99% of what you see here is what's going into production. There may be some small, there most likely will be some small minor changes. We are like the last step. All of us dealers and everything that went to the event in Italy are the last step before they go into production. So anything that we find, being that these motors are now in different countries and in different markets and different people flying them, and that they're doing the final fine tuning before they go into production with it.
And I think an important thing to say here for that is we want your participation in that as well. We'd love for you guys to come help us test this motor out, give it a test flight, tell us what you think, tell Vittorazi what you think, because that's the only way that we're going to get better is by taking that feedback and making those final changes that are necessary.
All right, Tony Paramotor. If anyone can afford it, they can buy it, but is there any other ways to purchase this new paramotor? how long is the warranty, and how much heavier is the motor? There's a lot of questions here, so we'll start with the first one.
So as of right now, there are a limited set of certified EFI dealers. Aviator is one of those. Check with Vittorazi to find if there's another local dealer near you that will service this as well. But as of right now, the only way to purchase one of these motors is through a certified EFI dealer through Vittorazi. Addressing some of the other questions in there, there was a lot. If anyone can afford it, they can buy it. That's not necessarily true. This is going to be a very, very limited release motor. There's going to be a very small number of these released for sale for the public, and Vittorazi really wants to make sure that the people that are going to be purchasing this unit, at least initially, are going to be part of that sales process, are going to be part of that discovery and making this engine better for everybody.
Vittorazi wants to, like partner with the customer that's going to be buying these engines initially in this, at least the first year or so, to work with the dealer and work with Vittorazi to give feedback, any potential issues that come from production, work directly with the dealer, work directly with Vittorazi to resolve those issues, improve the product so they can go full throttle into mass production of this.
I actually did confirm this with Vittorazi. The warranty, just like the standard Moster, is going to be 2-year warranty.
How much heavier is the motor? How long did Vittorazi test this new motor? Years, question mark?
So first of all, we did address this in the first video. We'll talk about it again here. It is 8 pounds heavier. All of these components, the CFI unit and the new throttle body and everything, all that adds up to an additional 8 pounds heavier than a standard Moster Plus. As we mentioned before, there are some trade-offs that you can do to like make that 8 pounds, because that's a lot, make that 8 pounds a little bit more manageable. Like use less fuel, right? This thing is more efficient. You can probably take off with a couple less liters because you're not going to use as much fuel. So that addresses the weight concern, I think. Have they ironed out all the bugs? I don't think so. There's probably going to be some bugs with this, and that's okay, right? This is the very first. I think everybody kind of expects that for the first off the line motor. That's why we really want to make sure that the customers that buy this are part of the process. Part of the process of, let's send all the data off to Vittorazi and let's figure out why the engine had that motor out, stuttered, or whatever it did. There's going to be bugs, but there is a process in place to help solve those bugs, right? And then Vittorazi really is invested in making sure it's a good experience for the customer.
They spent the last 4.5, 5 years developing this, prototyping, working on developing it. So 99% of the bugs that they have experienced are not going to be part of this. They're getting ready for production. So yeah, there may be a couple of bugs here and there, but they've spent tons of money testing, developing, hiring engineers, building a new facility, building a new test stand that's incredible. Run a paramotor full throttle overnight and see what happens, whatever. Like, this is not just a mom and pop shop. They're serious about this.
Yeah, when we were there looking at the Vittorazi factory, there was some seriously impressive stuff going on.
Yeah, for sure. The shop was nice. I will add about the weight as well. The battery I weighed it this morning was 1.2 pounds. The electric starter that you'll be familiar with from the dual start Moster is 1.8 pounds. So there's that almost 3 pounds additional that's going to be off to the side. The rest of the weight is all going to be in here. And what I've noticed is when I grab the paramotor to like lug it around the shop, yeah, I can feel the additional weight. When I put it on my back, because it's up higher on your back and tighter to your back, that's when you really don't feel it quite as much. So the weight is distributed well.
Richard Porter, 4873. It will be interesting to see updates on the lifespan of the unit. What are your estimates on the EFI enhancing lifespan of the motor and reducing running costs versus initial extra price?
Well, as far as reducing maintenance goes, the maintenance schedule is fairly similar to the standard Moster, changing the one brass bushing, that sort of thing. I believe reliability is going to be increased tremendously. And the other thing about that too is your troubleshooting is going to be 10,000 times easier because you have the display, you're downloading telemetry, sending that to the dealership or sending it to the Vittorazi. So that's going to make life a lot easier for so many different people that don't have to do all that troubleshooting and learning to be a mechanic on the fly and everything. The lifespan should be increased, I would think. We're all just spitballing on it though. That'd be an answer directly from Vittorazi.
If you're trying to balance the equation and make the price tag make sense as far as I'm going to have to do less maintenance or buy less fuel or whatever, if you're trying to balance that equation and make that high price tag make sense, it's going to be hard, right? You will have less maintenance, you will use less gas. Those things are all going to add up. But this is an expensive motor, and a lot of that expense goes into that 4.5 years of research and development that Vittorazi did putting this motor together. Yes, it is more expensive. Yes, we acknowledge that. but we think that a lot of really good engineering has gone into this, and you know, those initial customers that pay that bigger price tag are going to be part of that development process with Vittorazi.
Mark Allison Paramotor says, did Vittorazi mention any intentions to bring the EFI to Adam A's?
So what we can say about that is, number one, these components have all been designed very modularly. There have been no official plans to bring EFI to any other Vittorazi motors, but you can kind of tell from the way that they designed this that they're thinking about that.
High Out R Magpie asks, I would like to try it. When is it officially for sale? Can I buy the motor only, or is it going to be sold as a set? And a question on the LiPo battery, can it be changed to your choice to LiFe instead of the LiPo?
Talk about the battery question first, because that's the easiest to answer. The answer is no. The components are as designed. Any changes would invalidate the Vittorazi warranty. So battery is what it is. That's just what it is. When is it for sale? Starting slow delivery in January of 2024. You can purchase them now. Hit us up on Facebook or send us an email, give us a call. We'll talk about the process, because it is a little bit more of an involved process than purchasing a regular Moster engine, but the sales process starts now. Delivery starts in January 2024. So it will be sold engine only and as part of Limitless Paramotor through Aviator.
Clay Tong 777777777. Are you going to be able to switch out throttles, or due to the new wiring, are you going to have to run theirs?
Can you use an aftermarket throttle on this paramotor? And the answer right now is we don't know.
That's a great question. That's something we're working with Vittorazi. That's the whole point of doing this pre-production testing with all the dealers and everything, is so we can give our feedback, and that's one of the things we're considering as well, because we run standard off-grid throttles on all of our Limitless builds. So we're going to work with Vittorazi and see how they'd like to handle putting different throttles on these things.
All right, everybody, thank you very much for all the questions. If you have more, we're happy to take more questions and do another video like this. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this out in the field. Neil's going to strap it on his back and fire it up and do some other tests.
This literally just came in the mail about 20 minutes ago, so we're pretty pumped to start playing with it.
This history in the making. Hometown legend from the basement. Feel the bass groove from the top down. Came to free the people on lockdown. Let me show you how I do this. No AC, we the coolest. Smell the roses and the tulips. Spin it like a hula. Fill it all in your medulla.